Welcome back to the Wonder Jam Cast. This is the second episode of our Victory Lap. And in this episode, I sit down with my brand new business partner, Ashli. We started the sister brands. We launched those in September of 2020. And Ashli has been the managing partner of Basis. And she shares some of the things she's observed about joining our team, some of the ways that we've been working together, and some of the things that she's seen her clients do in order to be successful selling their products online. And I'm excited for you to get to meet Ashli a bit more over the past episodes of this podcast. You've heard a lot from myself and Allie, and Ashli is wonderful and amazing and smart and gets to work on so many successful brands and people who are growing their online stores that there's a lot of wisdom to be gained from listening to her throughout this episode. She drops a lot of gems inside of this. So without any further ado, here is Ashli. Since we started working together, one of the things that I learned about you that surprised me, because I've known you for a decade, we'll say, and the thing that surprised me about you is that as we were talking a little bit about some of my stories and Allie's stories about how we got into entrepreneurship and creativity and things like that, that you had a bunch of your own. And so I was curious of like, what were you like as a kid? And I think I'm curious about this question and I'm excited to share it with people because it surprised me. I don't know what I thought you were like as a kid, but it was different than whatever I would have guessed.
I love it.
So yeah, what were you like as a kid? Like what kind of stuff were you into? What were you like obsessed with?
Yeah, I was a really curious kid. I was just a little kid nerd in like all of the best ways. And even from a really young age, I loved technology and was enamored by it. One of my favorite pictures is of me and my dad in our kitchen. And it's probably like 1993. So it's just like an iconic 1993 kitchen. First of all, I have wildly curly hair and my dad has wildly curly 90s hair, and we're like chilling at our home computer, which we were super lucky to have a home computer in 1992. I think I was like 6 or 7 probably, and it was in our kitchen, and I think my dad got it to do like accounting stuff for his small business. He owns pizza stores. But I learned how to write some MS-DOS prompts on the like black and green screen to launch some sort of little game.
Whoa.
And I remember feeling like it just unlocked this magical world. Like this device can do so much cool stuff if you just know how to like type in the right magic code. And I love it. Like from there, I feel like a lot of my childhood memories have this underpinning of using technology for creativity and art and even entrepreneurship. I spent hours designing pictures and greeting cards and floor plan designs for my bedroom using Microsoft Paint.
Yeah. It's like an old interior design. You were like an interior designer.
Oh, totally. I had the best bedroom too. It was like a sidebar. My mom loved that her kids were creative and pretty much just let us do whatever we wanted. So I had like a space themed designed bedroom with like inflatable furniture and disco bead ball like strings hanging from the door. So when you walk in, it's like, just cool and fun. Yeah. But I remember designing all of that stuff on the computer to show my mom like what I wanted my room to look like, which is super fun.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's incredible. And you also had a little art kid background. Yeah.
Yeah. I just, I never did anything really formal, but I always loved art and design and would paint and color and make pictures and design things. And my mom just always encouraged it, but it just always felt like it was right alongside technology. Like I never, like Allie was like, oh, I'm a, painter first. And this was my love. I was like, oh, I really like that stuff. And I get it in my mind, but the way that it outputs for me was always through technology, whether it was designing little cards for my friends or actually the year that I stopped believing in Santa, my mom put me in charge of writing the letters from Santa to my little sisters who still believed. And I designed like the coolest letters ever using this application called Creative Writer. And my sisters to this day are like, that's the year we knew Santa wasn't real, because only Ashli would have designed this like ornate typed out note from Santa instead of just like a handwritten letter.
It's like too good.
Oh yeah, it was just too designy.
It makes me think of those. It's like how companies have gotten really good at sending direct mail that seems like it's handwritten, but it's definitely not.
Oh, I know. I love those actually.
Yeah.
I like
Yeah.
love breaking them down to see if they're real or not.
Yeah.
It's my favorite
No,
thing.
I just got one that I was like trying to smudge the writing because it felt like it was perfect, but I thought it was fake. So
Oh my gosh, I love it. So yeah, it just always has been that togetherness of art and technology that I've loved. I made my first web page in like 7th grade, and all of my best memories have technology in them.
That's so cool. Did you have a computer before other kids?
Yeah. Yeah.
I grew up on a farm in a different there was like a different reason that we had. It was like to look at hog prices in the future. Was like to look at like the stock market of actual livestock.
I love it.
But yeah, it was to pay attention to those things, which was so funny. But I was early in my grade too, and so it was a lot of. I did a thing where I would get. It wasn't Microsoft Word, but it was some equivalent thing, whatever it was that we had, and it was. I would type out a message to my friends and then change it all to wingdings so it didn't make any sense, and it felt like I had just made a secret language.
I love it.
And I would print it and I'd be like, you can go home and like figure out what this is.
Oh, you printed it? That's mean. So I couldn't even just change the font.
Yeah.
Type
No,
it all.
I probably didn't know how to email then. Or anything. It was, it had a good intent.
Did you have the printer that had like the holes on the side that you had to line up in the tracks and with like perforated paper?
Didn't. No, it was a little after that. I wish I knew what you really got a computer. I feel like I have to figure it out. That's really fascinating. And so this like it's like pretty easy to see how that ties into the work that you do today. Is there anything that you feel like, oh my gosh, I've been doing exactly this thing, like in your day-to-day as you're working, you're like, oh my gosh, this is like I've been doing this for 30 years.
Yeah. I feel like it all comes back to that curiosity though. Like I still feel like that is the bulk of my day job, where I'm like, I actually have no idea how to do this, but it is my personal mission in life to figure this out and to tinker and to play with different design layouts, or sit up at night and think about how to make your weird inventory situation work on Shopify, or custom code something that no one's tried before. Like it's all curiosity. And I feel floored most of the times when I look at my life now and I'm like, what I do for a living is just messing around on the internet, which is what I love to do as a kid. And it's so funny too, because it all comes full circle. Like my parents were like the first generation of like our screens ruining our children, and they're like, Ashli, get off the computer. That's enough Sims, like enough Yahoo Messenger. And they're like worried about it. And now I'm like, see, it all turned out fine. I do this for a living. And like, I was just, way too cool and ahead of the time. And now I do the same thing to my daughter. Like, Emerson, that's enough Roblox. Like, I'm concerned. You should probably go look at a flower or be outside. And then the other part of me is like, but maybe she's just like I was. And she's this like curious little builder who is just using technology as her like creative outlet to do other things that she loves, like engineer things and design and do interior decorating, and like all of these little things that she does through Roblox feels like that creative outlet. So it's really interesting now being like sandwiched between knowing what I was like as a child, knowing what my parents thought of technology, and then how I look at technology with the next generation, and keeping that like open, curious spirit about it and not being afraid of the change and of the pace that the world moves in, like embracing it and being excited about it feels hard, but like such a good and interesting thing to wrestle with.
Yeah, it's really cool to see. I can't imagine if in so many ways it feels like we've always been doing this, and at the same time like it's very different now than it was before, but also that's what old people have always said.
Yeah, I'm like, am I just becoming an old person, and now I'm like actively fighting to not be scared of change?
Yeah. That's fascinating. Tell me, so the other part of it, so I guess I've seen both of these things sort of infuse your work as we've been working together more, but you also you had a very sort of traditional corporate work life before you did your own thing, before you were here, or before you're part of the team. Talk a little bit about that. It's easy to see how like childhood ties into what you're doing today, but what about your like professional life before entrepreneurship?
Yeah. So a lot like you and Allie, I graduated right in the thick of the recession. I graduated in 2008. And so I got whatever the equivalent of a web design degree would be. Didn't really exist. Actually, I just found out in chatting with some people recently that it still doesn't really exist. And you kind of have to figure it out and hash your own major together. But I graduated, my first job was as an in-house web designer and developer for a trucking company. And I would drive an hour and 20 minutes a day from Columbus to get to this trucking company job.
Really?
Yeah. And it was, just the height of everything. And it was scary. And I was just thankful that I had a job. But then after that, I got a job as an in-house designer and developer for an e-commerce company in Columbus. And that was probably the most transformational position I've had because it was 2010. It was before Shopify or BigCommerce or any other big name platforms for e-commerce have really risen up. And so everything they did was truly from scratch. And they were the first company in their industry to go online and do online sales. And they were in a healthcare field. They actually sold like durable medical equipment, things like wheelchairs, and really complex wheelchairs that are very like custom fit for the bodies that are using them. And so it was one of those industries that you're like, this will never be sold online. You'll never buy a car online or a mattress online or a wheelchair online. And so they were really innovating. And we did a lot of design experimentation on how to figure out how to make buying something that complex really easy online. Should we make the options for choosing your size and color buttons, or should we make them drop downs? And, just figuring out these things that now when you talk about it, it feels like so intuitive, like where to put an add to cart button, or do we show product reviews before a product description, like things that feel so, to me at least, as a person who designs web pages for e-commerce stores every day, and like easy answers now felt very not intuitive then. And it was really fun to like mix design with looking at the data of how it affected sales and listening to real customers and how they purchase things to figure out how to make that work. It was just really, really, you truly felt like
it's fascinating. It was so, you probably don't think of it as innovative, or sometimes it's like easy to be insulated and not realize until you get out. You're like, oh gosh, we were like, it was pretty far ahead of a game at that point. That is because I watch you interact with projects or clients, or even and start to figure out how to solve problems for people or build out their website. And you always have an ease of tackling complicated things that always seems surprising to me, but it's not. If you sit and think about, you've been doing, like, it used to be a lot harder. Like it probably is very easy to do something complicated.
Yeah, I feel like I'm like, oh, it's cool. I figured out how to buy a custom fit, wheelchair online in 2010. So
yeah, some of our clients more custom checkout or like shopping experiences. I'm always like, Ashley seems really calm about this, and I don't get that. But
I think I just always know there's a way, and it's just having the mindset of experimentation and curiosity. And I think the clients that we work with, that's a huge fit check. If you want to work with us, is just having that mindset of exploration. And if you're willing to explore with us and to try some different options, I am always 100% sure, like, we will figure it out. We can edit DNA. We can surely figure out how to fix your shopping experience.
Yeah. Not we. We don't edit.
We personally cannot.
Humans have figured it out.
Humans can do that. So we can do that.
Is there anything, and I know you've worked at some like large organizations or other creative organizations. I know at one point you were Allie's boss as you were a creative director. Is there well, I'm curious a little bit. Is there anything that you found in those corporate settings that have translated well into how you interact with small business owners? Or is there anything that, is there anything like, how have you found it be like, oh, this is a very different mindset, or actually this mindset serves small business owners really well?
Yeah. So the role where I was Allie's boss for a very, very short time, and I was an excellent boss. I was a creative director at a digital agency in Columbus, and I spent a lot of time leading designers and developers on lots of projects, all different shapes and sizes, big projects for people like McDonald's and Kellogg's and Bath and Body Works and Pottery Barn. And then we worked with a lot of small businesses too. in the Columbus area doing like boutiques and jewelry stores and bake shops who wanted to sell online for the first time. And so what all of those had in common, I think, were figuring out a way that feels intuitive for customers to make whatever conversion that is, whether you're like McDonald's or a local business, just finding that story that's really unique to you and eliminating all the extra, right? Like, honestly, most of the brand choices people make comes down to a feeling or a connection with the brand. And so how do you let that story shine and let go of all of the extra? When you're in it, when you're a small business and you live in the brand every day, sometimes it's really hard to see that like golden thread that sort of goes through everything, because it all feels important to share and it all feels like equal weight to you. And so I think something I've learned by just working with hundreds of clients is like how to find that golden thread that I'm like, this is the thing, this is your magic, this is the thing that we need to pull out and tell the story about and align the experience around. And so sometimes you just need that outside person to do.
And I was
a million times.
Yeah, and I think sometimes it's easier to notice if you're not sitting inside of it all the time. It's one of the things I think is Alan and I have worked with so many tiny businesses, or very small businesses, or people who are very like self-funded and have to be scrappy. You start to find that it's like you have to figure out what advantages you have, because you're not going to compete with, if you're starting a bakery, you're not going to compete with Panera or Kroger or any of these other places, but you have to figure out what's you, and what's you is that you're small, you made it in your kitchen, you're something about that intent. And so it's like capturing those, it's like really accentuating those differences is what it's all about. And it's hard. It feels like it's becoming harder to do that in an online shopping space when there's so much like, it feels like every day we find a new sparkling water that's like branded in a new kind of cool, like there's like, it feels like there's just so many versions of those things. Is there anything you feel like small businesses, like what have you seen help people be successful when it comes to actually the online shopping experience or building an e-commerce business? As you sort of lead basis, it's working and serving online retailers with their online shopping experiences. What kind of things are people doing now where you're like, oh, this is making a big difference? Or if somebody who's listening to this is sort of like firing up their own thing or their own side hustle, what kind of like, I would be like, go push in these directions? Yeah,
I'll definitely give some like very tactical things that we've been trying that work really well, but I feel like it's good and important to start with, the phrase, if you build it, they will come. I think it's like the Field of Dreams. You'll never hear me quote a sports thing ever again. So that's as close to sports knowledge as I get.
There we go.
I think a lot of clients come to us and they're like, my online sales are down. I think that if we rebrand or change the way that the website looks, it'll really improve things. And I think we're very honest at saying that can be kind of a disastrous business move. Often what makes an e-commerce site successful are all of the things that go around your website. It's knowing your audience and feeling good about your pricing and your fit in the marketplace, and creating a really awesome fulfillment experience, and having awesome customer service and intentional strategies for growth. Like, I could go on and on with all of these, like, you're like, cool, these aren't easy answers, and they're not. But I think above all, the brands that we work with that have the most success day in and day out have built really amazing communities and relationships around their brand. And they've done the really hard inner work almost of building a voice and a story behind the brand. And they all have really great organic followings that just, me as a consumer, I could tell you their story because I just love the brand so much that I have become an advocate for it. And I can tell you all about the product and the owner and why it's so great. And so whether it's through like a social following, or a lot of our clients have that same vibe, but in their own local community through word of mouth and just customers that have been loyal for years, it's not something you can shortcut. And it's not something that I can design you a website that says, here's like an authentic feeling website, but you don't have a story or a heart behind it. You have to put that relationship work in over and over. And if you do that, you can honestly have a really bad website and probably be doing fine.
Yeah.
And if you're at that point, we can certainly like help you grow and take it to the next level and make that story something that's really beautiful and easy to share and pull in new people. But if you don't have it, we can build you something beautiful that will sit vacant on the website.
I think that's such that's a good reminder, because there's so many things that would be, and I've always feel like this. I have an online store that sells coffee that I roast. And I think I understand, I've seen enough of the same thing that you're seeing, that I understand I don't need to bring you into it until I've got a little bit more sales going on, or I've got some of my other systems working, because those are the things that make a big difference for people. And then once those other things are cooking, then an overhaul of a website, or sort of a rethinking of what the shopping experience actually looks and feels like, can make a pretty big difference.
Yeah.
Where you can see it becomes worth a pretty significant investment when you have the rest of it working behind the scenes. But just as I learned today, I volunteered to ship out, I think I've told you this, but I volunteered to ship out a bunch of mugs for one of our clients, because they had coffee mugs they were shipping out. And it was 40. And I was like, oh, that's like easy. We have like stuff to, and I was like, we don't have boxes. We don't have the stuff. We don't have anything. And I was able to recruit a friend to come in and help, because it was like, it ended up taking way too much. It took way too much time. I was like, I don't know when I would have never gotten it done.
Yeah.
Because those things, it's like, those are the things that serious businesses who are like shipping their stuff out, or able to respond to a customer quickly and take care of something. It's like, there's a lot that goes on behind the scenes of a successful e-commerce or retail business in general, that you don't, I think that's part of it. Is sometimes like you walk into a business, like you walk into a coffee shop that's really doing a high volume, or they're doing a lot, and you can tell there's like 12 people all hustling around, or a kitchen or a restaurant that's really busy. But sometimes online stores feel like, I don't know, you just like click 4 things and the stuff shows up at your house the next day. But it's Amazon has sort of set that precedent, right? It's like, I don't know, you just like search for stuff and buy it, and then it's there. But there's a lot, I think business owners get surprised sometimes about how long things take when it comes to handling all of that. Is there anything, when you say, if somebody has all that stuff kind of going on, when you tell people about how to think about their actual online store, is there anything that you're like, these are the principles you've got to really be taking serious, or if you're planning on doing an overhaul, these are the things to keep in mind?
Yeah, I do think that if you're at that point where you've figured out a lot of the operations behind the scene and like where you fit in the market, that's when really beautiful branding and design does have a huge payoff. I mean, there are like millions of direct to consumer e-commerce stores that all look pretty decent on a Shopify theme and, feel pretty legitimate. And so I think that's where truly polished, professional, unique design that feels like a reflection of your story and of your brand has a huge payoff, because we've all been on those sites where you're like, oh, there's like nothing here. Like there's a product picture, there's a button, but it's not, I feel nothing emotionally to this product. And so building that emotional connection and designing that in, baking it into the website design is where the fun and the magic happens. And you'll get so much payoff if you kind of know who you are as a brand and are ready for that. I think that's what I love to do. That's my favorite part of all of this. And then I think there's some really specific tactics that you could implement in an online store and probably see some pretty good payoff around. I think integrating user-generated content and diverse customer stories into your website in really authentic, meaningful ways, there's always amazing payoff in that, and you can see it in the revenue. So layering in photos from real customers using your product, really well-written testimonials that we design into the homepage and the collection pages and your product page, and not just tuck it into a testimonials page that's like in a drop-down menu, but being really intentional about sharing those stories in a way that feels good and not braggy. There's always payoff in that. Customers want to see themselves reflected and want to feel like they found a fit or a community when you're purchasing a product. Like, is this for me? And those are the really nice ways to make you feel like you belong with that brand.
It makes a lot of, it's, I would have thought of there's probably a million answers you could have given to what should you think about on your website. And I think getting case studies or testimonials or photos from your customers or making sure you're getting all of that is something that it actually requires a lot of work. And some of our high volume online stores we worked with have to go through like a very specific internal process to make sure they can get it all. And they have to, it's a big deal, but it makes a huge difference.
Huge impact. And I think another one that has definitely cropped up in the last year through COVID has just been small businesses are so uniquely positioned to give meaningful ways to connect with friends and family during a time when you can't be together in a way that like Amazon and Target can't do, right? Like if I want to send a birthday gift to my sister from Amazon and put like a candle and a t-shirt and a bar of soap in it, it's probably going to come in 3 packages. They're going to forget to put the gift note in there. It's going to feel like crap to receive, and it feels super meaningless to give.
Yeah.
So something that our small businesses can do is make it feel like so exciting, right? You can curate a really beautiful gifting experience when you're a small business. You can add a handwritten note on, you can gift wrap it, you can make sure that it all comes in one box and it feels like a nice unboxing experience. A lot of our clients this year, we focused on doing that. And I think there's been huge payoff in just bridging that gap of connection that people can't get right now.
Yeah. It's the people who are successful. I think of everyone we know who's, even whether we worked with them when they were small and then growing, or we just got to meet them when they were growing, they all did that stuff at the very, very beginning. And it just, it speaks to all of that. It's fascinating. I'm going to shift the questions a little bit to talking about what it's like to be on my team. And then you can just kind of tell people how great it is to work with me. I'm just kidding. But so 6 months ago, we sort of launched to the world, September 1st, 2020, we launched the sister brands, which are Basis, Wonderly, Studio J, and which was a new thing. And we had been cooking that up for a while. We didn't decide to do it on September 1st. That's when it came out. But so we've been doing this for about 6 months together. What are some things that you've, and we were very aware that it was going to be maybe confusing at the beginning and would get more clear to people as time went on. How do you feel like people, I guess, one is if you're going to go back, is there a way you would tell the story differently? Or if you're going to sort of reintroduce what we call the soil and the sisters, like if you were going to reintroduce that to the world, how would you talk about it? Or how do you talk about it now?
First of all, I can't believe it's been 6 months. It was the fastest and most enjoyable 6 months ever. So happy to be doing this with you guys. If I were to describe, like, here's what soil and sisters is in a concept. Allie and I both over the summer read a book called Braiding Sweetgrass that I think we truly found on a personal level and a professional level transformational. And in the book, the author talks about the concept of a 3 sisters garden, which has its roots in indigenous gardening, and Native American farmers would plant squash, corn, and beans together. And that's because they all feed off of each other in this really like harmonious and beautiful way. So you plant them all in the same soil, but the corn grows first and it reaches really tall and big towards the sun. And then the beans come in second, and they sort of like vine and rope around the stalks of corn. And they need that foundation of the stalk to be able to get up to the light. And then the beans flower in between, or the beans, like the flowers of the beans magically come in these like perfect in between spaces where the corn leaves are not, so that they're all like perfectly spaced to get sunlight. And then the last crop is the squash, which grows like this big viney carpet underneath it all, and it intercepts the light between the other two that's been perfectly spaced out. And so all the light that it gets, it can use really efficiently and without waste. And they all like chemically release, different things into the soil that are way beyond my comprehension, that they help each other. And the soil becomes more nutrient dense because of those crops being there. And it's just this beautiful metaphor that you almost never see in business. So we couldn't find a good business metaphor for what we wanted to build, which is something that's the symmetry of each brand, and the thing that each brand can bring to the table actually makes all of the other brands in the family, in the garden, even better. And that harmony is just coming to life like every day. Like I see it working and I'm like, oh, this conceptually was really fun to think about and to like visualize, but it's actually working in practice, where we've set up this foundation and this soil for things to grow on. And, there's respect for one another. There's excitement about the brands. There's support for one another's brand. And knowing that we will all just like bring our gift through our little brand into the world, and then it will turn back into gifts for our brand, and that there's enough for all of us. Like, it has just felt really cool to see in practice. And my hope is that we grow into like a 20 sisters garden. And for us, and I know that you and Allie feel the same way, is that as we all come up to the sun, into the light, we find other ways to plant more crops and bring others up with us so that we can all experience the abundance and build an even firmer garden because of it.
No, that's really
fun to see it in practice. It's like, it's actually working and not just a cool idea.
Sometimes it does feel a little bit like it was always a nice concept to talk about, is sort of just like it's an abstractly, but then we even financially, right, we like tried to set it up in a way that sort of was reflective of that, and it's been really cool. We've probably confused some lawyers and tax people, and
they're like, wait, what? You all just want to like give back to the communal soil?
Yeah. But it also, I think the other part of it that's it a little bit like limits size, right? It's like not an infinitely scalable business, which none of us were doing anyways. Like we weren't, we were as big as we were going to be. Probably we were like right sized, I think. And I think there's some of that it feels like the more that we get to sort of like talk about this, or even sort of just enact and be this together, you could see clients start to get it, and they start asking us. I just had a client who's like, hey, can you kind of walk me through like business, or how our business is structured? And I was like, it's fascinating that I'm getting asked to do that, but it was because of what they experienced in working with different sisters. They kind of got passed back and forth between sisters. It wasn't like Ashli was their account lead all the time and then somebody else was, but it was more like, oh, this feels like I'm in the same garden, right? But this is a different plant. So
maybe at this life stage of your business, you need squash, and next year you might need beans or corn. And we all have built this like foundation together for clients to come into and feel super supported, but also we're not so general that we're like dabbling across lots of areas, but we can get really deep roots in certain areas for you when you need that, which it feels pretty cool to unlock this like huge garden of options and services and packages that are going to help your business grow.
Yeah.
Oh, the metaphors are making you want to barf. There's so many of them, but
there's too many. Nature is an inspirational thing, right? It's like, I think there's so much of I will always, it has been surprising to me as we've gone back to, Allie and I did sort of a listening tour a bit, and our team went on a process. It was before you were part of the team, but our team went through this process of sort of understanding our clients better. You were on our team as a contractor. I shouldn't say you weren't part of our team. You were like on the roster for sure. You had a jersey for sure. But as we sat and listened to clients, nobody wanted more logo. Like no one who we gave a logo to in the past was like, ooh, I want like more logo later. Right. But they were like needed different types of help, whether it was like financial or organizing their whatever. And because of, I don't know, I just think Allie and I have like been able to remain human beings through all of it, if nothing else, and like listen. And I think you have done that as well, and you sort of embody that. And I think we have like people they trust talking to a human being. Like they know they're not going to get, like sometimes people don't go talk to lawyers or tax people or someone else because they know they're going to get like a talking down to, and we just don't do that much. So I think so we just started having all these conversations all around everything except for the thing that we had sold them in the past. And we had sort of been the Wonder Jam had been embodying a bit of the reality of this. We had just positioned it oppositely. We're like, you can come to the Wonder Jam and like do anything, but each person on our team was like autonomous. I think we were always like, Matt, what kind of work do you want to be doing? We'll just do work like that. Like we're never like, you better do what corporate says you're supposed to be doing. Which I found, I came back to this TED talk by the name is going to escape me, but it talks about the what motivates people actually, and autonomy is one of them. Is being like, if I can do things in the way that I want to do things. And so we've always been that. So this has always been true of us, but it wasn't ever pronounced, and we were a bit nervous about being misunderstood, I think. And it's been cool to see it be inspiring to people, which has been fascinating. I guess this is going to be my last question, unless there's something else you're like, we got to talk about. I mean, this is my podcast, but you're
I'm here
like,
for the ride.
but you're part owner of the podcast as well. So, both of our bosses would probably say, let Ashley talk about whatever she wants to talk about. So, what would be in this last, like, say, everything? I've heard somebody say, like, ever since all of this, the last year feels like we've been like,
what is the word for this?
I don't know. How have you found yourself being, I would say, how have your motivations changed, but then also how have you kept them? Like, what have been the things that have kept, like, driving you, or you found yourself wanting to jump into deeper? Because there's been at least a dozen things in the world over the last year where you start to be like, I don't think work's that important, or like work doesn't, there's like, and we've had times as a team where you're like, hey, today's like I don't know, the government might get overthrown today. Feels like we're allowed to be distracted when that's going on, or like we're getting vaccines today. And
that's only happened like 50 times.
Yeah. I was like, hey, y'all don't need to like request PTO to go get a vaccine. This isn't a policy that we're hopefully going to have to reenact all the time. Tell me about, like, how have you found yourself staying motivated, or how would you sort of like put language to what's been a driver to you?
Yeah, I think it's been a year of definite transformation, but more of like a learning to sit in complexity and not get a quick answer. That's been my biggest, like, personal lesson over the past year, is just, all of us, I think, have learned some sort of hard lesson over the last year about whether it's equality or privilege or the power of your voice or the gift of health and time. Like, there are some days where I feel like I got the short end of a stick, and then also I feel really, really lucky in another way. And so, like, sitting in that in between can feel hard. And so I think for me, just learning to let that complexity be there has been very transformational, to not have to give a fast answer to someone, to not have to solve it, to just know that, like, the world is kind of chaotic, and that's pretty much the only thing that you can count on, which is maybe a tangent, but something that's been on my mind a lot is just living in that complexity. And then what has really kept me motivated, and what I think maybe had been lacking for me personally, but even just like a macro level, is community, and really, really deeply caring about it. And, not getting that because of distancing or whatever it might have been, makes you realize that it's really all we have are each other. And so what has kept me motivated personally are just the people that surround me, whether it's my own family and friends, but, Allie and Adam and Matt and Dana and all of her clients and everyone around us. Like, this is all we got at the end of it. Everything else could go away tomorrow and we have no control over it. And so how can we move into 2021 and beyond in a way where our focus is building authentic communities that feel included and empowered, and that everyone has a seat at the table? Like, that is the antidote to whatever mess it is that we're in right now. That's everything. And so I think about that a lot more than I ever used to. I don't think it would be hard to say that I'm probably true, but it would be hard to say that I was a selfish person pre-2020. But I think it definitely brought to light how much more I could have been focusing outwardly on others and not worrying so much about my own inner complexities and short ends of the stick, and really focusing on building that garden that can support each other. And you don't have to carry the weight all the time, or you don't have to be the person getting the sun all the time. It's
No, that's so true. It's like, I want to build a garden for other people that's useful, but it also takes care of me. And I think that's something that we found through the past year was, 50% of our community might have gone out of business or stopped working on the thing because they couldn't invest in their side hustle because they had to do their whatever. They had to take care of a kid now instead of in between Zoom meetings or something. But the other 50% was like, we need help, and you exist, and we're part of your community, and so like let's get help there. And so to me it was a little bit like, what was the philosopher group TLC said, don't go chasing waterfalls, right? uh there's so much stuff in business or creativity or even just being online and sort of existing on the internet of like how many followers or how much stuff are you getting. And at the end of the day, hardship came, or things were difficult or odd or felt kind of uncomfortable, whether it was COVID or even just social issues or an election. And it was, the people who had time for you and you had time for change really dramatically.
Yeah.
And that took care of us, and has always sort of taken care of us. And I hope it takes care of other people as well. And so I think it's a fascinating answer. It's like community has been the thing that's like, it keeps you connected, keeps you motivated. And just for like, it feels like, as we've even talked about growing our team a little bit or hiring people, it's like, we're always like, I want to make sure we get to keep like checking in and talking with each other. I don't want to become too efficient,
Well, it just feels like the solve, not that any of what's happened in the past year has an easy solve, but I think that if you think of racial inequality or COVID in the healthcare system and the election, like everything comes down to community in the end, and just a mindset that is caring for others and then it cares for you too is probably the really oversimplified answer that's really hard to put into practice. But I just remind myself that all you can do is build your own community and know that it will grow and flourish and other people can come in.